Hey, everybody. Welcome to True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. I'm Kristi Brower here with my co-host, Katie Weaver.
Hello.
So excited to be joining you on our weekly podcast. It is the third installment of quite a story we've been telling, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But we always kind of like to check in. Katie, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. This is my 5th week of being in quarantine.
Yeah, me too.
We did finally sneak out and go sit around a campfire with our other sister this weekend a little bit, just, keeping our distance, but sitting around the fire, which was nice. But I am good. Tensions in my house are a little high. I think everybody's just they've had enough of this shit,
Yeah.
So we're finding ways to, quarantine together apart. So everyone can have a break from each other a little bit. I've definitely been noticing a little more snippy stuff, a little more, shady stuff going on. So yeah, it's interesting. We've had enough, but we haven't had enough because we're still here. Yeah.
I hear you. I had a freak out a few days ago, and Rhonda's like, I think we need to go for a walk. And she just got me out of the house and we took a big long walk. Because I was like, I've about had all I can take. And somebody's going down and I don't even know who it is because I'm not even mad at anybody. But yeah, yeah. Actually, the updates on this story have really kept me busy and researching on it. And, it just seems like there's something new almost every day.
Yeah, and it's been another really busy week.
It has. So let's jump right in. Of course, we are covering the ongoing missing children case, the Daybell Vallow case, which is the name of the 2 adults that are involved. But the children are JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan. As you know, probably if you've been listening to us or if you've been paying any attention to the news, these children have been missing since September of last year. Their mother is currently incarcerated in the Madison County Jail in Rexburg, Idaho, which is where Katie lives and 25 miles from where I live. So this is a very relevant case to us. And she is awaiting her pretrial hearing coming up. And I think there's a bail reduction hearing coming up, several things coming up.
Yeah, next week. On the 24th, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. In which she continues to refuse to tell anyone where her children are. So we have covered already the basic story of the children's disappearance 2 weeks ago. And then our last episode was about Joseph Ryan, who is Tylee Ryan's father, who passed away a couple of years ago. So we've been trying to get it. This is such a complicated case. If you could see it in a Venn diagram on the wall, it would take up like half my house. There's so many people and so many situations. And so we were just trying to cover it kind of a step at a time. But we wanted today to get into the beliefs, the religious beliefs and the cultural beliefs that are heavily driving this situation. And one of the reasons that we want to talk about them is because underlying all of this, Chad and Lori are LDS. They're Mormons, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Katie and I were both raised LDS. And so although we're no longer affiliated with that church, we do have, I think, a unique insight into this because we get where some of this is coming from. Now, you got to know that these 2 are extremists and they're not really, what they're doing now is not really Mormonism. It is Mormonism on steroids, also hallucinogens, I think.
But Chad has been excommunicated.
Yes.
So I know a lot of LDS people want to clarify that because they're feeling so uncomfortable about being associated with these fools, And so the Chad has at some point between the time of Tammy's death and now has been by his own mouth been excommunicated. So he's no longer a member, but he has been up until this point.
Has been and has been a very prolific writer in Mormon fiction, mostly some more memoir type books of his own life as well, but a lot of fiction. His stuff. Now I'm going to tell you something on his Facebook page, which is still active. You can find him and see that he's actually still posting
with a public page.
With a public page, his @ is the Doomsday Writer. So if that tells you anything, his books are about post-apocalyptic kinds of things. Lots of stuff about adventure kinds of stories about, after the apocalypse has occurred or after the second coming of Jesus Christ has occurred, and all the things that might happen then. He also has done some writing about himself and his own near-death experience, and some writing about himself as a medium, that he does identify himself as a medium, that he can communicate with those who have crossed over. Now, those aren't that unusual, and I wouldn't call that wackadoodle stuff at all. I mean, lots of people have had those experiences, and you yourself, Katie, are a medium.
Yeah.
And so certainly that stuff is, I'm not saying that that's outside the norm. It's not at all. But he's very prolific as a writer. I can't remember how many books he has, but it's many, many books. And it has been in the past very popular as a Mormon writer. So that's just something to know about him, is that's where he's coming from, is he's been putting his beliefs out there into the world in the form of his books for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's something that a lot of people have had experience with him. And one thing that I've heard from local people is that the Chad that they have known in the past and who they read his books and went to church with him, is a completely different person than who he is now. He's gone through a really significant transformation, I guess is the word that you would use.
Yeah.
None of these things were anticipated to happen by anybody in his life. If you were, even a couple of years ago to say that he would be, potentially suspected of killing his wife, potentially suspected of involvement in the, these two children being missing, those kinds of things, no one would have believed him, would have believed you about that, particularly not his wife, who passed away last year. So some significant things
who was his right hand in his publishing house. I mean, he had a little publishing firm that he published all of his books through, and other people's as well. Yeah. And she was all about that. She was very active part of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she was a librarian, and I think books had a huge meaning for her. Books were important to her. And so being involved in publishing and certainly this, this was her religion as well. And so, books that were published from that standpoint with those beliefs, that was important to her as well. So she was very actively involved.
Yeah. So I do have a list here of his titles. Are you interested in hearing them?
Yeah. Let's hear them.
Okay. So according to Amazon, at least what you can get from them, he has Martial Law, The Great Gathering, Evading Babylon, Living on the Edge of Heaven, One Foot in the Grave, The Celestial City, Days of Fury, Reclaiming Liberty, The Rise of Zion, which is an interesting thing because that's something that is talked about in the LDS Church and among the Mormon people where we live.
That word has heavy meaning in our culture.
Yeah, An Errand for Emma, The Keys of the Kingdom, Chasing Paradise, A Prophet in Palmyra, Baptism, and The Aaronic Priesthood. So those are all of the titles that I'm seeing. At least he may have more, but those are all the ones that you can at least access on Amazon. Though I would recommend that you don't, because one thing I had heard was that one way that they're trying to fund all of their legal fees and whatnot is that actually he experienced a huge spike in book sales because people were, trying to get a feel for who this person is. Yeah. So, just know that if you are purchasing his books, you may be adding more money to their legal fees to defend, these missing kids, or to maybe help the other side of these missing kids. So, I can't tell you what to do, but just think about that if you're
if you're curious stuff, but I'm not buying any of it. That's for sure. Yeah. So that's a little bit about who he has been in the past. So that's his near-death experience at 17 had a huge impact on him and really changed him in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And that really got him writing and thinking about, what happens when we die and, all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But, and I don't have clear dates on this, and there's a lot of information that I don't have, but I'm sure you can find if you look. But at some point, Chad got involved with, I'm going to call it a group, because Well, okay, they're calling themselves now a multimedia company. They refer to themselves as Preparing a People. Now, I want to be clear that Preparing a People has put out a public statement that they are in no way affiliated with Chad Daybell at all. It's pretty much a Chad who kind of situation. Now, it's kind of funny because when you go to their Facebook page, there's been a lot of accusation that Chad and Lori are involved in a cult. And that accusation was pointed at Preparing a People, the multimedia company. Their @ name on Facebook now is Not a Cult, lol.
Yeah.
They also, I think quite intentionally say that they've had several LSD speakers and authors in their indoctrination forum. I'm quite sure that's supposed to be LDS, but I think they might have spelled it wrong on purpose. Just my own guess. They do talk significantly, though, about the history of them indoctrinating people. I have never worked with a multimedia company that indoctrinated me into anything. I'm just going to say. But they very clearly say that they don't know Chad. They never worked with him. They have no idea what's going on with him. Okay. So they are an organization who has put on, or a group or a multimedia company or whatever, they put on various kinds of multimedia events that are focused around the second coming of Jesus Christ. So it is literally preparing people for the second coming of Christ and how that may bring about the apocalypse and how it's very important that you're prepared for that. So if you know what a prepper is, these folks are preppers, but they're prepping very specifically for a certain event. Now, I just want to tell you something funny. I went to their website or to their Facebook page to learn more about them and to understand some of this. If you know anything about Facebook fan pages, there's always a list of related pages. And number one related page with them is, guess who? Chad Daybell. So if you click on him and you go to his public page, his banner, his Facebook banner at the top is a picture of a Preparing a People event that occurred in February of 2019. And the third speaker over from the left is Chad Daybell. So clearly, obviously, they want to separate themselves from him, which I completely understand. Who wants to be involved with these people who have potentially, murdered someone, have done away with some children or put them somewhere or done something, they don't want to be, affiliated, which I understand, but they
clearly, and in the beginning of this felt very harassed by the media as well, and so they're kind of fighting back. I mean, they go so far on their fan page as to threaten anyone who uses their name with libel,
right?
Which that's a little iffy threat.
It is, and I understand that they're no longer affiliated with him. That's pretty clear. They don't want to have anything to do with him, but I do feel like that Chad's affiliation with them at some point is when things kind of started to take a turn for him. Yeah. And many people in Lori's family have said the same thing, that it was getting involved with these things that they started to take a turn. Now, I think, and Katie, you said this to me earlier, that now what the two of them have is sort of their own cult of their own making, that it is not affiliated with anyone other than themselves and their own, I got to use the word delusional thinking and beliefs. There's some really scary stuff going on here, but know that this is rooted in, first of all, originally the LDS religion. Then you have Chad and all of his books that are all about, he's the doomsday writer. So all of this doomsday, second coming, apocalyptic stuff. He's gotten way into that, as well as mediumship. And now he's moved from
and prophetic dreams.
Yes, prophetic dreams. So, you may know this if you've been following this story, but Chad and Lori actually believe themselves to be gods. They believe they can do anything they want because they're gods. And I want to talk about that for a minute because that is rooted heavily in LDS belief. And I know people don't like it when we talk about this, but you and I grew up with it. We know
that's true. Yeah,
that Mormons are taught, or we were taught as children, that if we followed all the rules and did all the stuff and were good kids our whole lives, we would go to what was known as the celestial kingdom, which is the highest level of heaven. And if you go to the celestial kingdom, guess what you win? your own planet in which you can be God over your own group of people. That was very much in Mormon doctrine when we were kids.
Yep. You and the spouse that you are sealed to.
Yes. And there had to be one of those, and they had to be the opposite gender of you for sure.
Yeah. And you would become gods and goddesses of, your own planet.
Yeah. So Lori and Chad seem to have sped that up a bit. As far as those beliefs are concerned, because they both have put out, statements that they do believe that. Now, I want to tell you something that's on his Facebook page right now. This was posted on Easter Sunday, which was April 12th, 2020. And he said, I want to wish all of my disciples, followers, students, subordinates, worshipers, and fans a great Easter. That's legit, real. He wrote it himself on his own Facebook page. Okay. So that really tells you what he believes about himself.
Yep.
There's a huge element to this that and you see that with Lori in court, this idea that they know something we don't all know.
Yeah.
And that they are above all of this, and that they don't really have to participate, and none of this is really going to have any impact on them. You really get that impression from them, don't you think?
Oh my goodness. If you have watched any files or tapes from Lori in court, particularly her first visit to the Madison County Courthouse, which if you want to see this kind of stuff, just go to Justin Loom's Facebook page. He is a reporter in Arizona who has cracked a lot of this case open, or Nate Eaton at East Idaho News. But you can see the live stream from her being in court, and you will be horrified at her behavior.
Yeah.
Laughing
and smirking,
flirting with her attorneys. Her behavior is beyond shocking. Really,
it is. It's
for someone that's what she's accused of. Very strange.
It's so incongruent, It's so it really. I can't diagnose anyone, but I am a social worker and I have some experience with this. And I will say that if I saw someone behaving that way in that situation, their behavior and mannerisms and things were so incongruent with the experience and the thing that was going on, it would indicate to me mental illness. It really would.
Yeah.
So, what was I going to say? I don't know. I'm so dumbfounded by the whole thing at this point. It's just, but it's really important to understand where some of this has come from, that they appear to truly believe that they are gods, that they are above the law. And here's the kicker. Chad had a prophetic dream that the world was going to end, or the second coming was happening, or it was the apocalypse, or whatever term you want to use, is coming on July 22nd, right?
Or 20th.
This year. Or 20th.
One or the other, yeah.
So part of this all along, there have been lots of questions from people who know about their beliefs and, where this has all taken them, is that they seem to think that maybe we won't even be around when it comes time for there to be an actual trial, because it's all coming to an end.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot of prophetic stuff that has happened, but one thing that you should know is that Chad also had a prophetic dream that his wife Tammy was going to die. And guess what?
Weirdly.
She did. Weird. Now that is being investigated by the AG's office here in Idaho.
Yeah.
And they're looking into the potential that was a murder. Of course, as you know, it was initially deemed a natural death. Completely healthy woman didn't wake up at age 49. Yeah, it seems legit to me. But
why wouldn't she? Well, and he believed that one so much, apparently, that, just within a couple of weeks of her death, he increased the life insurance on her exponentially.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that you can find more about that at East Idaho News. But yes, that's documented.
Yeah, it is. Well, the other thing that is documented is that Lori was preparing for their wedding before Tammy, the first wife, died. And that is also documented in her internet searches and Amazon purchases.
Well, she bought her wedding ring 3 weeks before Tammy died.
She did. She bought her wedding ring and was searching for a wedding dress 3 weeks before she died. Not only did they know she was going to die, they knew when. How interesting.
Was this prophecy or self-fulfilling prophecy?
Right. And there's been a lot of that because going back to Charles Vallow, which was Lori's previous husband who passed away last year when her brother shot him supposedly in self-defense, she believed that he was going to die and told multiple people that he was going to die. And had, there had been some sort of prophecy about that. And conveniently, that also occurred.
Yep.
Now,
well, and interestingly, with life insurance, there had been some extreme issues because Lori kept entering Charles' account where his life insurance was and locking him out of it.
Yeah, that was just broken by Justin Loom last night. On Fox 10 in Arizona, that that they have proof now that she kept locking him out of that account so that he couldn't change his policy.
Yeah,
because she was the beneficiary at that time.
And their marriage was, as we've spoken about before, was on the rocks. I mean, he did at one point actually file for divorce.
Yes,
earlier in 2019. Sadly for him, had a change of heart and then was killed. But and he did manage to change that policy to his sister.
He did.
But yes, she was tampering with that account and trying to keep him out of it, which is quite telling.
He communicated that to the insurance agency and said, we have to change this and there can't be, she is not allowed in this account. He had reported to his own attorney that she had told him that he was going to die, that she was going to kill him. Those things are all documented long before he died. She made it pretty clear that she knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about the beliefs that seem to have something to do with the children.
Yeah.
And now this came from Ian
Pulowski.
Ian Pulowski, who is married to Melanie, who is Lori's niece. I know. Get out your Venn diagrams, my friends. You're going to need a lot of string. Anyway, so he is the new husband of Melanie, known as Melanie Boudreau to a lot of people. That was her previous married name. But she recently married this man, Ian Pulowski. And it appears from the things that Ian Pulowski has written that he didn't have any idea what kind of crazy train he was marrying into.
No, it sounds like most of this stuff she spilled to him on their wedding night. Yeah. Interestingly, they eloped to Las Vegas and got married the same weekend that Alex, the brother who, is suspected to be the killer, that did kill Chad, or sorry, Charles.
Charles, my gosh.
There's so many names. Charles, right. And, is suspected of shooting at Brandon Boudreau and suspected of shooting at Tammy. And, I mean, he's, we've talked a lot about Alex, and we'll probably actually do a whole show on Alex. I'm sure his involvement here warrants that. But Alex got married to a woman named Zulema Pastines the same weekend in Las Vegas that Melanie Boudreau and Ian Pulowski got married. And that, I believe, was in November or the very first part. It was the very end of November, first part of December. And then, of course, it was just a few days later that Alex died. But at any rate, they got married, and she had only been divorced for a minute. From Brandon Boudreau. They had just barely gotten divorced when she married Ian Pulowski. Ian had also not been divorced for very long. He had an ex-wife and children that live here in the town that I live in, who also knew nothing of, this crazy train.
Yeah. So in some of the things that Ian has talked about, one of the beliefs that has come out of this whatever twisted, convoluted situation that Chad and Lori are now in is the idea that a person can become a zombie. And a zombie is someone who their body is taken over by a demon or a slug. I don't know exactly what a slug is, but it's sort of like the idea of a walk-in where something else takes over a person's body.
And their light is gone.
Their light is gone. It's like their soul is gone, but their body is still living, apparently, is what their belief is. And the only way for them to be saved from that situation is for them to physically die. And
right, because isn't there a belief there that the soul is basically imprisoned?
Yeah,
or trapped
in
or
some
something.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then there have been reports of Lori referring to her children as zombies, referring to Charles as a zombie. So this gives, and no one really knew what that meant, but this gives a lot of context to that idea that they've become zombies, and so they have to be killed in order to be saved.
Yes.
We're in a really scary place with all of that right now, I think, because it's pretty clear that these, and I'm going to call them delusional beliefs, because I think that that's the level that we've got. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, because I want to talk about how you get from trusting your intuition, trusting your dreams, to this. But I want to say that's a lot of people are very concerned that that's a very scary bit of information when it comes to where are the children. Yeah. And also just the cold, calculating way all of this has been handled, as though this had to be done, that this was actually for their best benefit. One of the things that Lori said to her son Colby after she was in jail is, don't worry, we're all going to be together again soon. And so there's some, of course, this is all speculation. We're just
but understand
at this point that maybe that means that, the world's going to end on July 20th. And so then they're all going to be back together again as a family. That's kind of the implication.
Right. Well, and you look at, the Mormon belief here would be that the families are together forever. That if you have gone through the temple, you've been sealed together, families will be together forever. Now, Chad and Lori seem to believe, actually by their own mouths, things that witnesses have heard them say, are that they have ascended above what regular LDS teachings are for regular people. They've ascended above that. Those teachings don't apply to them so much anymore, but they still have that belief that families will be together forever, granted that you have done, the work that you're expected to do. And so, when she says that, to someone else that may have a different meaning, but to me, that makes my blood run cold, because knowing that is a very typical catchphrase in the LDS church, that families will be together forever. That's how this goes.
Yeah, there's actually literally a hymn called that.
Yeah.
So the idea that, at some point they're all going to be dead and then they'll be back together. That really is the implication. One of the things that, and I don't fully understand this part of it, but Chad and Lori have said that they believe that they are one of the 144,000, which are, a very special group of people that are going to do all this special work after the second coming of Jesus Christ. And, and because of that
belief,
it is,
it is a biblical belief.
But they've kind of stretched it, I think, a bit for their own benefit. But they seem to think that now they really can't do any wrong, that anything that they do, they're doing for a higher purpose that the rest of us just don't understand. And that's why none of this matters. Really, this isn't that big of a deal, even though, of course, we know that it is.
Of course. And in Charles's divorce papers, that, of course, never,
never really got filed.
Completed. But in the divorce papers, he says that Lori told him that she is a god or a goddess, if you would like to, put the female spin on it, but that has been called to gather the 144. There are witnesses who do say that she had approached them and told them that they were supposed to be a part of the 144,000. She was actively gathering the people that she was feeling compelled to be a part of, what I think we can kind of loosely, comfortably attribute to being the cult of Chad and Lori. That's what this is about. There are people who have said she approached them and they told her that they didn't really believe that. They didn't think they should be a part of that. I suspect that Zulema Pastinas, Ian Pulowski, others that they've kind of pulled in are people that she had identified as supposed to be a part of this. I'm guessing that's why those marriages happened. There's some beliefs here that there are, she's supposed to be gathering them together. I do think that it's probably, I think about her sitting in jail where she really, really, really didn't think that was going to happen. I do believe that she really felt like she was going to be able to bail out and just continue to do her work, gathering her tribe here. Because they're also, they're professing that they believe that the second coming of Christ is going to occur right here where I live. And that there will be tent cities here.
Which is such a huge departure from LDS beliefs. Which that's supposed to happen in Missouri. So interesting. There's a lot of departure. So it's, you have to know that this is in some ways a weird spin-off of LDS, and in some ways it's not. It's not. Something else completely.
Yeah. Well, and to be very clear, obviously, no LDS people believe that you should be killing your children or disposing of your ex or, killing your spouses or any of the nefarious things that have happened here. None of that is LDS doctrine in any way.
No. But one of the things that is very heavy in LDS culture is prepping. We know we live all around it. As children, we were taught that we should have 2 years of food storage at all times. This idea that something bad was going to happen or something major was going to happen and that you were going to need to be able to provide for your family with what you had right now. That was a huge belief. It still is a huge belief. And our parents, we've talked about it, but our parents weren't like super hardcore Mormons. And so we did some stuff, but we had a garden, we did canning, we had an extra freezer full of meat. We definitely had a lot of extra food growing up.
I can remember as adults for Christmas some years, our parents would give us food storage.
Bags of wheat or, flats of cans of vegetables and various things. So that kind of, obviously everything that's happening here is being taken to the extreme and further, but that is a very deep-seated cultural practice for Mormons, that the idea that the second coming is going to happen, the second coming of Christ, and when it does, you need to be prepared. Now, here locally, that has expanded, of course, partially from, the Preparing a People group and other groups that are similar, I think, into stockpiling weapons, stockpiling ammunition, having bunkers,
or tents. There was a really interesting interview, on East Idaho News with a person who apparently used to work for Chad, who, fell deeply into his beliefs for a while. And one of the things that he insisted that she purchase was this enormous canvas tent for her family to live in when the big D-Day comes. And it cost her thousands of dollars that she didn't have to sock away to have this tent. But there was a belief that the LDS members would be called into action, and they would be asking them, if you were prepared and you had done your work and you were really ready, you would be a part of the white cities. And you would join the white city. Interesting.
The white city. Oh my God.
Weird. If you weren't and only kind of prepared, then you would be asked to join a blue city or a green city. That's apparently where the less good kids go.
And all of this is supposed to be right here where we live. I think they talked about that it would be out near Yukon, which is a little town like 10-ish miles from where I live.
Yeah. And so, and so according to her, she had gone into an enormous amount of debt to purchase all of the food, supplies, tent, all of the things, that she was asked to have. That was probably partially based on what she was learning from Preparing a People. It was also based on his association and affiliation and hers with another website called A Voice of...
Oh, yeah. AVOW.
Of something. AVOW.
Another voice of warning. So this is another group that comes into this. And this is also a local group. So the Preparing a People, as I understand it, the people that run that multimedia company live in this area. The person that runs AVOW also lives in this area. I got to tell you that AVOW in our area is well known as a hate group. Very anti people of color, very patriarchal, hate-filled stuff.
So very anti-LGBT.
So you've got this combination of preppers, people expecting that the world is going to try to come to an end at any moment. And then also only the white, straight Christian people are the good people. So you can imagine that this is a combination of it's a recipe for disaster, which is obviously sort of where we're at with this situation, but it is.
It's interesting with AVOW because AVOW's been around for quite a while.
Yeah.
And apparently the person who started AVOW in the first place was more about religious people discussing church doctrine. And most of it was really just people like dissecting a scripture or a story or something. And, it was more of like a religious study group. And then over time, it kind of rolled into what it is now. It is a paid site. There are parts of the site that you can view. It's a forum. And there's parts of the site you can view. But if you really want to get hardcore and into it, you have to pay for access to the site. It is owned now. It was purchased from the original owner. And the person that purchased it is a person named Christopher Parrott. Christopher Parrott is a good friend of Chad's. It was reported that when he first got home from Hawaii, Chad actually lived with Christopher for a time. Christopher's been very outspoken on news stories and in the news and all over the internet, claiming that that Chad is a good person and that the kids are safe. This was a custody battle and that everybody's just freaking out over nothing. And he keeps saying that. At one point, he actually made a public statement that he was disgusted that the FBI had not been to talk to him yet so that he could tell them what he knew. And I guess that was a call out.
Guess so.
Rate. So Christopher Parrott
he also has
a player here.
He's also implied in like public Facebook groups that he knew where the kids were, that he knew exactly where they were and what was going on. Turns out, no, it doesn't.
No, it seems to not really be true. It seemed a little more like maybe he was just drawing more attention to himself and to his site, maybe.
Yeah. Trying to make some money. Well, there was a portion of the site in which you had to pay to have access to Chad specifically.
Yes.
Chad had his own forum on this group and you had to pay. It's since been pulled down, as I understand, but where you paid to actually have direct access with him. So this is
the profit. Yeah.
Literally. That's pretty heretical in the LDS church. Yeah. That's getting pretty extreme and far afield because, the Mormons have their own prophet and no one else is allowed to call themselves that. So it was things like that did get Chad excommunicated from the Mormon church.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can do your own research on these groups. You can learn more about it. It's a huge topic. We didn't want to get into all of it because it's too much, but I think you may get some idea of where and I guess what we need to say is that at some point, Lori became involved with this group and got to know Chad. And that's when things started to go crazy for her. That's when people in her life said she changed very much. She started talking about this really extremist stuff. And, there's proof that she was affiliated with Chad in one way or another for at least a couple of years prior to them actually marrying each other. So somehow, some pretty heavy influence has occurred there. I've seen a lot of people say that Chad is just an innocent victim in all of this. And no, he's not. No. This all originated with him. She wasn't involved with this stuff until she got involved with him. She was on some podcasts with him. There's a lot of podcasting and video production and stuff. They're a multimedia company, right? Anyway,
but any podcast that involved Lori or Chad has been pulled.
Yes, you can't find them.
They're gone. Yeah,
there are people who have them. There are people who have them, but you can't find them publicly anymore.
Not on a Voice of Reason's website. They're gone. But
right. It's a voice of warning. Another voice of warning. Is what AVOW.
Oh, right. Sorry. No, I meant preparing a people.
Oh, preparing people. Right.
It was their podcast that they were on at one point.
I encourage you to do your own research on this and to learn about it because it's a lot. But I wanted to have a conversation because Katie and I have both worked as professional psychics and healers. And we don't see that as not mainstream kinds of stuff, really. But somewhere in all of this, Chad went awry. And I wondered if you would give us an opinion, and I'll pop in there with some too, about how does that happen? Because it's not like he's the first person to have some really significant spiritual experiences, to become a medium, all those things, to go a little too far and to go off the rails. So where do you think that happens with somebody?
With Chad, I have a few thoughts on it. I mean, he by his own word, has had 2 different near-death experiences that have shaped some of his experience, which makes me wonder, like, from a physical place, if his brain is okay, you know? That's part of it. But I feel like really what has happened is that as he started sharing experiences, as he started gaining a little notoriety, that kind of stuff really went to his head. And yeah, we've seen that. And, I mean, I think about healers like John of God, or the Bikram yoga guy, that actually ended up being like sexual predators,
Right.
They didn't start out that way, you guys. They started out deeply enmeshed in what they were doing, and they believed in what they were doing. And I think Chad was the same. I feel like as more people, though, started nipping at his heels, started kind of venerating him, started looking at him as somebody that they really listened to and looked up to, I feel like his sense of self-importance grew and grew. And as that grew, perhaps his ability to cross the lines between what his intuition was telling him and what his ego was telling him got their wires crossed.
Yeah.
I suspect that it wasn't, that he was already on that road, but when Lori met him and got so bananas for him and started feeding him full of her visions and her ideas and all of the things that she believed him to be, I feel like that really flipped a switch in him. I don't think that started it, but I think she really poured gasoline on his fire, and they started fueling each other in a really, really unhealthy way.
Yeah.
I would imagine that Chad actually has some gifts. I think he does. I think he would have to start gathering the following that he had. He has some gifts, but somewhere along the way, he went from a place of just wanting to help other people to wanting to be worshipped by other people. And to me, that's where, that's probably where he took the wrong road. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree. I do feel like as when you do psychic work or healer work, you have to really keep your ego in check, and you have to remember that you're still just a regular person like everybody else. And, I do think that some of his religious beliefs got involved in there too. That whole idea of being a god and, being raised a white male in the Mormon church does teach you that you have a lot of power and that you have a lot of value above other people. That idea in his Facebook post about his subordinates, that word, oh my gosh.
Wow.
But it so doesn't surprise me because we grew up in that culture, and we know that men were given such a higher standing than women, and particularly white men. And so that was already built into him from childhood, unfortunately. And
Definitely.
I think that was a big part of it as well, that his ego just took off on him. And I mean, there's a very fine line between what your intuition says and what your ego tells you, what you want and what is true. And I think about the things like, with Lori's husband, well, he's going to die. Well, they were very unhappily married. They had a lot of problems. She probably had a wish that he could die so that it would just be over, and that got blown out. Obviously, Chad had decided he didn't want to be with his wife anymore. And same thing, that idea that, well, what you want becomes your intuition. So if you want it, then it's going to happen, it all got really, really mixed up. But I really, truly feel like there is some mental instability here, particularly with Lori. Some delusional stuff that's going on with her that is very concerning, because she seems to be completely unconcerned about the fact that her children are missing. And she's in jail. She's not having contact with them or anyone who has them. There's nothing going on here in which, if they were somewhere that she was just, able to just check on them periodically or something, that's not happening.
No.
And yet she's so confident that this is all just going to go away.
Right.
And, the whole thing about, like, when Christopher Parrott said it, and that, the kids are fine and this is just a custody thing. if that were true, don't you think Lori would have proven it by now so that she could get out of jail?
Right.
It's not true.
She had the opportunity to prove it before she ever went to jail.
She did, and she did not take that opportunity.
She's had lots of opportunities, and I still see people online saying, if she would just turn over the location of the kids, this would all be over. And I go, no, it won't.
Mm-mm.
No, it won't. This has gone way too far now,
Yeah, well, it has, because there are other criminal charges now, not just, the child abandonment is, of course, is the biggie, but there are other charges.
Well, and that's it. I mean, to the Christopher Parrots of the world, who, obviously are still believing what they're saying and actually think that maybe this is a child custody case. I'm so confused about how they can ignore the pile of bodies at Lori's feet. You know,
I know.
That's very hard to. Most of us will never experience a murder or an accidental death or a shooting by, self-defense in our lifetimes. And yet there are so many, if there are too many coincidences for, I think, most reasonable people to go, well, yeah, that can just be explained away by this. And of course, that can be explained away by that.
Particularly because all of the people who have passed were inconvenient people in her life.
Yep.
Conveniently, her ex-husband who was fighting her for custody passes away. Yeah. Conveniently, her husband, who she was, not getting along with, passes away. Conveniently, the wife of the man she wants to be with passes away. And then conveniently, the man who did kill her husband, self-defense or not, he did. Yeah. He also passes away. So that affiliation with her and how these people could all be inconvenient in her life and then they're gone has a great deal of weight in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
That if you get in her way, well, and of course now her children, we know because she's said it publicly to people. There are lots of witness statements that say that they did things like say that Lori didn't have any children, or that she was an empty nester. She only had older children, or that her daughter died a year ago, lying about everyone having kids. So it does appear as though they became inconvenient to her as well. And now they're gone.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I want to come back around to that's what's the most important in this story right now is those missing kids.
Right. Well, Melanie Boudreau-Pulowski did tell the Chandler police that when they asked her where the children were, said that sometimes kids are full of light and then they're not.
Yeah.
That was her answer. If that doesn't chill you to the bone, I don't know what will.
Right. Right. Goes right.
And you got to think about Tylee was 16. Tylee was 16. She had been through the death of her father and her stepfather. She'd been moved all over the place. Do you think this kid had some attitude?
You bet.
I'll bet she was full of it, know? After raising 3 teenagers? Hell yes. She was probably difficult as hell, Yeah. I'm sure that she was giving her mother a run for her mother. She was sick to death of all of this BS.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure that she was. I've thought about that too, about that, JJ is young enough that he would just kind of go along with mom, but at 16, Tylee, not so much.
Yeah, surely Tylee. And there has been some speculation about what did Tylee, did she believe in her mother's beliefs? Friends and family members that are associated say no, that she didn't, that she fought her mom on this stuff, that she did not subscribe to this stuff. And so that too makes me wonder, how mouthy, combative, difficult did Tylee get? Had Tylee, I'm guessing Tylee, well, she had, because she was in his car, according to the FBI, that, Tylee knew Chad. So Tylee was not stupid. She probably had put this together, that her mother was having an affair with a married man. I just think about the fact that Tylee wasn't a dumb kid. She was smart, and she had a voice, and she probably had called her mother and perhaps Chad out many, many times. And when you think about kids are full of light and then they're not, well, was it a kid who had called bullshit on her mom and all of the stuff she was up to? And then you look at JJ, who was disabled, and it sounds like was, he was autistic and he could be combative and was quite difficult. And all of his coping mechanisms, like his dog and his dad, had disappeared from his life. I don't know this, but I'm going to assume that he was probably pretty challenging.
Yeah. Oh, I bet it was.
And how is a goddess to gather her 144,000 together with these damn kids?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we know for now. We're going to continue to cover this. And it's so interesting how more things just continue to roll out. There was a big controversy this week about that they had to move some of her hearings because of the coronavirus and because of our state shutdown. And there was a big drama over that her rights were being infringed upon, and, just her rights to not get the disease or anyone else. So, whatever.
Yeah.
So we're keeping an eye on the news, and we're going to continue to update you with this story.
Yeah. In fact, her attorney has filed this week for an enormous amount of paperwork.
Yes.
Interestingly, and I have a message into an attorney friend. I will report more on this later as we know the answers to some of these questions. But what her attorney did, and remember that her attorney is not a criminal law attorney.
Right.
And he's had some missteps already in filings and filing things incorrectly, because obviously he's not done this before, but he, some people have said that he's a friend of the family. He's a friend of Chad's, and that's why he remains here. But anyway, her attorney, Mark Means, this week filed a whole stack of briefings with the Attorney General's office demanding an enormous amount of paperwork from them. Wants them by the 6th of May. And I mean, it's things like teller tapes from conversations that Charles had at banks with tellers. I mean, that's how in-depth this is. The really interesting thing, though, is that Lori has not been charged with anything by the AD or by the AG, nothing yet, And yet her attorney is filing for all of the evidence he can think of to get ahead of it and get a look at it before she's even been charged, which is really interesting.
I think they know what's coming. I think the AG for that, the investigation of Tammy Daybell's death, I think they know it's coming, and he's trying to get ahead of it.
I suspect so. So anyway, pretty interesting. It's if the AG could produce that by the 6th of May, which I can't imagine that they could, but if they could, that is enough paperwork that it would bury Mark Means' office for months.
Yeah.
Combing through all of that. It's an interesting tactic. It's something that I'm trying to get a little more information on for all of us to understand the wherewithals of doing so. But yeah, that's one of the big things that happened this week. So we'll keep you abreast of that as well. And we'll probably go through you next time with a list of all of the things that they asked for as well, because it is pretty fascinating, actually.
Yeah, I think it tells us a lot. Well, it's been very interesting to cover this case with all of you, and we know it's a little bit of a departure from what our podcast normally is, but we just feel like we're currently living it in our community, and we feel like it's good to document it and to be present with you about it. Because if you're mad as hell about it, like lots of people are, you probably want to know the background. So we're going to continue to share that. And Katie, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and this has been True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. We'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Bye, guys. Take care.